Hey all, and welcome to another, well, it's not late night, it's only a little bit past 8:30, but another, sorry, I have to close that because, yeah, this camera, for some reason, even though it's recording sound, it always goes and throws up an error message saying the microphone's not detecting sound. I don't know why that is. Um, your guess is as good as mine. This camera's almost old enough to vote at this point. See here, I got this back in, 2008, I believe it was. So yeah, pretty old camera. But anyways, what are we going to be doing the comparison review of? Well, today it's Dewar's White Label versus Dewar's Mizunara. Nope. So here on my left, and this confuses me. I almost wish it was like a mirror. It'd make more sense to me. Here on my left is the Dewar's White Label, and here is the Mizunara. Mizunara was a gift from Randall. I did the comparison of the white label and the 12-year aged because I believed it'd be interesting. This one is also interesting. I'm going to finish up this series by having the Mizunara against the 12-year aged, which is probably going to be more odd than anything else. So, I actually put up a lamp on this side because my face was just looking like a dark void. I'm not sure why that is. Now that it's deciding that and it's not the cap. You can kind of see it's like still dark on my face. So I'm trying to make more light on my face. So what am I going to dub this review? I'm going to dub it the hand blister review. This is doing yard work. Got a hand blister. Those things suck. I also scratched up my knuckles a bit too. You know, getting old, folks. So, without much further ado, let's just get straight to this. First, we're going to pour out the white label. Now, the white label has no age statement, but most people here say it's around 8 years old, thereabouts. And then we're going to pour out the Mizunara oak cask finish. Be very careful here, and you'll see why in just a bit. So, here is the white label, and here is the Mizunara. Oddly, they look more different on camera than it does to my actual eye. Um, they look pretty much the same to my eye, but with the camera, whatever it's doing, you can see here, this Mizunara appears just a shade darker than the white label. But to me, they both look fairly golden orange. Maybe, let's see here, maybe if I tilt it. Yeah, when I tilt it towards the light, the Mizunara does look a little bit darker. You know, just almost imperceptibly darker. Okay, leg-wise, and I kind of did an overpour, which means, yeah, this is going to be an interesting night. Both of them, fairly thin, though it seems the Mizunara over here is a bit thicker. Now for the nosing. Of course, I'm probably going to be short on the white label. I've already described the white label twice. Got fruit, stone fruit, a bit of more than a bit of booziness. And almost imperceptible peat. Generally smells sweet, but like I said, on the palate, fairly dry for a Scotch whiskey. Okay, onto the Mizunara. And it is much different. So you still have that kind of stone fruit, but the Mizunara adds almost like a spicy, herbaceous, I'd say almost vaguely incense-like note to it. Definitely covers up the booziness. So this one doesn't, slap me like the white label does. So yeah, there's a woodiness there, but it's not reminiscent of like a bourbon style woodiness. It's wood, but it doesn't smell vanilla-y. It smells more like cedar in a certain respect. Cedar-esque, evocative of cedar, but not directly like cedar. Maybe touches of camphor as well. All in all, a much more interesting nose than the white label. I'm going to take a sip of water now. By the way, this is on an empty stomach after a day of hard labor, so this is probably going to go straight to my head like a rocket, especially this rocket fuel right here. Well, it's kind of rude calling this. It's not really rocket fuel, but it's a bit rough for a Scotch. Let's put it that way, huh? Again, brief sweetness out front. Sweetness kind of makes a slight reappearance in the finish. A peat note that is not distinctly smoky or seaweed-like or even medicinal. Just sort of peat note emerges, especially in the top note, in the mids there, and really declines in the finish. And there's a sort of unpleasant astringency in the long finish. I've mentioned that before. That's the white label for you. And quite a bit of alcohol heat there in that finish as well. Quite a bit. Okay, on to the Mizunara. Actually, a little bit more water first. That's what gets you. Is like, so the thing is, like I've said in the original Mizunara cask finish review, Mizunara oak is very expensive. And while this isn't like a fine Japanese whiskey, it definitely has that characteristic of Mizunara oak at $27. I think you're going to be paying for the next like available not Scotch whiskey, but Japanese whiskey where you're going to have Mizunara, you're going to be paying more than twice that price. Just for the most basic Japanese whiskey that's aged on Mizunara. So I mean, if you really want to get that flavor note, and it's not the only flavor note that's really there in Japanese whiskey, but one of the distinct flavor notes, you can try this. So slightly more dry than the white label, but definitely much, much more smooth in that finish. The peat, again, is strongest in the mids. mostly a top note, and maybe has this time a bit more of a smoky, evocative smoky flavor to it, and just ever so slightly. The Mizunara mostly shows up in the mid through the finish. You know, it's a sort of spicy, again, woody note. Let me go and clear my palate just a bit. Very much a camphor top note as well with that peat. The cedar in the nose, when I did the nosing, it's not very evocative of cedar on the palate, but it is a woodiness, a different sort of woodiness. You know, it's not char, vanilla. It's not round. It's not really spiky either. It's how would I describe that? If I could say it, you know, in a I don't know. I describe tastes in forms of synthenesia quite a bit. You know, basically in forms of shapes. You know, certain tastes feel like certain shapes to me. And this sounds crazy. It sounds like I might be making it up, but it's true. You know, certain, especially with intense tastes. It's not spiky, but it is. I'm trying to find the right word for it. It's gnarly. So it's not spiky, not round, not angular, but gnarly. You know, like a piece of wood. Its wood taste is evoking the shape of like a piece of wood for me. You know, like a piece of, you know, a gnarly branch or something like that. I guess. You know, so it's like rounded, but it's also wavy, maybe. And moreover than that, like I said, a lot more taste notes there. You know, it's an interesting transition from that sort of light stone fruit and sweetness to this sort of woody, herbaceous, incense like notes in the mid to finish, with the only drawback being, of course, that sort of astringent note in the long finish that just kind of sits on the tongue and doesn't even completely clear with water. Um, it's kind of dismaying, honestly, you know, because otherwise, out of I'm just going to say it now. I mean, I'm going to do another comparison review. Out of the three, this one is probably, you know, the Mizunara is, excuse me, is the most interesting of the three. You know, in complexity, in flavor notes. But for some reason, all the Dewar's scotches has that sort of astringency in the long finish that sort of sticks to the palate. That is a shared flaw amongst all three, and that just might be me. That just might be my own personal body chemistry. Um, yeah. So just for a quick comparison, kind of going to go back to the white label. Yeah. This white label, it's going to become a mixer after this particular review. I just don't particularly. The more I drink it neat, the more I don't particularly like it. You know, it's just got that hotness to it. It's just kind of boring, and it's just got that astringency. Now the Mizunara, on the other hand, I can definitely see myself kind of savoring that one for a while. You know, like I said, it's not perfect. It's not a Japanese whiskey by any means. And damn, our Japanese whiskey is good. I haven't reviewed a single one. I've had them before because I lived in Japan. They're easy to get in Japan, and they're also cheaper in Japan, as most quality Japanese products are. They tend to keep Japan tends to keep their good stuff inside the country. But yeah, so that was your comparison review. Again, white label, I don't know, man. It's better than Johnny Walker Red, but nowhere near Johnny Walker Black. And Japanese Smooth. It is indeed smooth compared to the white label, and you definitely do taste the Mizunara oak casking. Again, this is probably it's drinkable, it's enjoyable, it's nicely complex. It's not perfect. It's not without its flaw, you know. That kind of comes from just the original Dewar's juice, I suppose. But at the same time, it's complex enough to be interesting. It's smooth enough that you're not when you take a sip of it. And yeah, if you're interested in seeing what one of the elements of Japanese whiskey is like, but you don't want to go and drop like $60 minimum on a bottle of like Hibiki. I think Hibiki is the one that is Mizunara Cask staged. You guys can go and correct me, all you people who have the money to regularly drink Japanese whiskey, I suppose. But yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it's definitely got that aspect to it. So that has been your comparison review for this evening. I am going to go and finish these up, and yeah, make some dinner. What's for dinner tonight? Oh, probably buffalo chicken and cheesy macaroni. Kind of eat like a 12-year-old, don't I? Buffalo chicken and cheesy macaroni, yay! Um, I have a lot of it. It was on clearance sale over at a time, so I just kind of bought a whole bunch of them, and that's the main reason why. So that's your whiskey review for this evening, folks. Cheers. Let's see if I can get that nice sound those Glencairns can make. Night, folks.